My name's Adrianne, 23 years old, the quiet one in a loud family. I grew up in the shadow of my golden boy younger brother, Caleb, who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. While I studied late into the night, earning straight A's and academic awards, my parents would interrupt my homework to watch Caleb kick a soccer ball in the backyard. "Look at him go!" Mom would squeal, while Dad filmed every mundane practice drill on his phone. I was the responsible one, the overlooked one, the one who kept our household running while they attended every one of Caleb's games. Teachers praised my work ethic. Counselors recommended me for advanced programs. But at home, these achievements were met with distracted nods and half-hearted smiles. My trophies gathered dust on a shelf in my room, while Caleb's participation ribbons were framed in the living room. For years, I told myself it didn't matter, that being the mature one was its own reward. But somewhere deep inside, resentment was taking root, growing stronger with every dismissal, every comparison, every moment I was pushed aside for my brother's next big moment. Growing up, everything I did felt like a rehearsal for Caleb's spotlight. When I won the district science fair in 8th grade, my parents arrived late because Caleb's practice ran over. They gave me a quick hug, then spent dinner discussing his coach's feedback about his natural athletic gift. I got good grades semester after semester, making honor roll without fail, but report card day was always overshadowed by whatever sport Caleb was playing that season. My debate competition victories were mentioned in passing, while Caleb's single goal at a recreational league game warranted a celebration dinner at his favorite restaurant. I used to wonder if I was actually invisible, just a ghost haunting the edges of family photos where Caleb stood front and center. But invisibility has a strange advantage. It gives you sharp eyes and sharper instincts. While everyone watched Caleb shine, I watched him stumble in the shadows. I saw the small lies he told about where he'd been, the money that disappeared from Mom's purse, the way his friends looked more like trouble than teammates. I filed these observations away, not yet understanding their value, but sensing somehow that one day they would matter more than anyone could imagine. My 18th birthday dinner was the first time it really clicked that this wasn't just casual favoritism. It was complete erasure of my existence. I'd been waiting for this milestone for months. College acceptance letters piling up on my desk, my independence finally within reach. Mom had promised a special dinner, just family, to celebrate my transition to adulthood. I wore my best dress, styled my hair, even put on makeup, which I rarely did. The restaurant was nice, the cake beautiful, 18 candles flickering with promise. But halfway through cutting the first slice, my mom's phone buzzed. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. "Oh my God! Caleb's been scouted for a minor league team!" The knife slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. Suddenly, my birthday became Caleb's celebration. Dad called the waiter for champagne. Mom was already posting on Facebook, and Caleb sat there grinning, soaking up attention that was supposed to be mine. The candles melted onto the abandoned cake while they discussed his bright future. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't second place in this family. I wasn't even on the scoreboard. On the surface, Caleb was everything parents dream of: charming, talented, effortlessly popular. His smile could light up a room, his laugh was infectious, and he had this way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the world when he talked to them. Teachers loved him despite his average grades. Coaches praised his potential even when he skipped practice, and girls followed him around like he was some kind of teen celebrity. But late at night, when our parents were asleep, I'd hear his bedroom window slide open, the soft thud of his feet hitting the ground outside. I'd watch from my darkened room as he snuck back in at 3, 4 in the morning, reeking of alcohol and smoke. He'd lie to Mom about early morning training sessions, but I saw him stumble to the bathroom, throwing up from the night before. He borrowed money from kids at school, promised to pay them back, never did. His charm was a mask, and I was the only one who saw what lurked beneath it. My parents never questioned him, never doubted his stories. If anything, they handed him more freedom, more money, more trust. I kept these secrets to myself. collecting them like evidence for a trial that hadn't started yet. Dinner conversations in our house followed a predictable pattern. Dad would ask about Caleb's day first, listening intently to every detail about practice, his friends, even what he ate for lunch. Mom would chime in with suggestions, praise, encouragement. Then, almost as an afterthought, they'd turn to me. By then, the energy had drained from the conversation. My straight A report card got a brief, "good job," while Caleb's C+ was met with, "you're improving so much." One night, after I'd won a regional essay contest, Dad actually sighed and said, "I should learn confidence from Caleb." The irony nearly choked me. I had confidence. Confidence in my abilities, my intelligence, my future. What I lacked was their recognition. Mom nodded along, adding that maybe I'd find more friends if I weren't so serious all the time. Across the table, Caleb winked at me, that cocky grin spreading across his face like he knew I'd never call him out, never disturb the perfect illusion he'd created. I smiled back, but it wasn't surrender. It was patience. That night, lying in bed, I realized something important. I didn't need to expose him. Time would do that for me. I just had to wait and watch. When I got into my dream university with a partial scholarship, I thought, finally, they'd see me. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday, and I practically floated down the stairs to show them. This was it. Validation of years of hard work, proof that I was worth celebrating. Mom glanced at the letter, murmured, "That's nice, honey," then went back to scrolling through photos from Caleb's last game. Dad looked up from his laptop long enough to ask about the financial aid. When I explained I'd need help covering the remaining tuition, about $15,000 for the year, his face changed. "We can't afford that right now," he said, even though I'd seen him write a check for $20,000 for Caleb's elite soccer camp just the week before. "Maybe you should consider community college first," Mom suggested, not looking up from her phone. Meanwhile, Caleb needed new cleats that cost $300, and they didn't hesitate. I stood there holding my acceptance letter, my future crumbling in my hands, while they planned Caleb's equipment shopping trip. I packed that letter into a drawer that night, right next to my anger, my disappointment, and my growing certainty that one day they would regret their choices. That summer was brutal. While my classmates prepared for college, posting excited updates about dorm shopping and orientation schedules, I worked 2 part-time jobs, morning shifts at a coffee shop, evening shifts at a bookstore. My feet ached, my back hurt, and exhaustion became my constant companion. Every dollar I earned went toward my college fund, slowly building toward a goal that felt impossibly distant. Meanwhile, Caleb spent his days sleeping until noon, playing video games, occasionally attending practice when he felt like it. His friends would pick him up in expensive cars, and he'd disappear for entire weekends, coming back with bloodshot eyes and stories that didn't quite add up. My parents never questioned where he went, or what he did with his generous allowance they gave him. One afternoon, I came home between jobs to find Caleb passed out on the couch, empty beer cans hidden poorly behind the cushions. Mom walked right past him, choosing not to see what was obvious. That's when I learned something valuable about my family. They saw only what they wanted to see. If Caleb was their golden boy, then golden he would remain, no matter how tarnished he became. But tarnish has a way of spreading, eating through the shiniest surfaces until there's nothing left but rust. My best friend Talia had been watching my family dynamics for years, biting her tongue out of respect for me. But one evening, after a particularly bad party, she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She pulled me aside at her apartment, her face serious. "I need to tell you something about Caleb," she said, showing me a video on her phone. There he was, drunk beyond reason, standing on a table at someone's house, bragging loudly about how he could get away with literally anything because his parents were completely clueless. He went on, slurring his words, talking about the money he'd stolen from Mom's emergency fund, the test he'd cheated on, the girl he'd ghosted after lying about wanting a relationship. The crowd laughed and cheered him on, but I felt sick. Talia watched my face carefully. "Aren't you furious?" she asked, bewildered by my calm expression. I was furious, had been for years, but fury without purpose is just wasted energy. Let him keep digging, I told her, saving the video to my phone. I'm collecting receipts. She looked at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. You're playing a long game, she said. I nodded. The longest game of my life, and I intended to win. The moment that truly broke something inside me came on an ordinary Thursday night. Caleb had taken my car without asking, the used Honda I'd bought with my own money from 2 years of part-time work. He'd snuck out after my parents went to bed, probably heading to another party. At 2 in the morning, I woke to the sound of metal scraping concrete. From my window, I watched him trying to park my car, the front bumper hanging loose, the headlight shattered. He stumbled out, clearly drunk, and left it there in the driveway like a wounded animal. The next morning, when my parents saw the damage, Caleb didn't hesitate. Adrianne let me borrow it, he said, his voice steady despite the lie. She must have hit something and didn't want to tell you. My mother turned on me immediately. How could you be so irresponsible and then letting your brother take the blame? I stood there, speechless, as they grounded me for 2 weeks and demanded I pay for the repairs myself. Caleb actually smirked at me behind their backs. That night, I heard him on the phone with his friend, laughing about how easy it was to pin it on me, how our parents would believe anything he said. A month after the car incident, Caleb came to me with a request that would ultimately become his downfall. He was applying for a prestigious local sports scholarship worth $50,000 over 4 years. The application required an essay about overcoming adversity and demonstrating leadership. You're good with words, he said, leaning against my doorframe with that practiced, casual pose. I'm good with goals. Help me out. It wasn't really a question. He knew I'd do it because I always did what was expected, always played the responsible sister. I agreed, but as I sat at my computer that night, an idea formed. I wrote him a beautiful essay full of passion and determination, but I carefully wove in phrases and entire sentences lifted from obscure sports articles and motivational blogs. Sources I knew he'd never check, but that plagiarism software would eventually find. Not obvious enough to catch immediately, but enough to damn him if anyone looked closely. The trap was subtle, elegant even. I handed him the essay with a smile. This should get you what you deserve, I said. He grabbed it without even reading it, confident in my help. You're the best, sis, he said, already heading out to meet friends. I watched him go, knowing I'd just lit a very long fuse. When Caleb won the scholarship, my parents threw a party that rivaled graduation celebrations. They invited family, friends, neighbors, anyone who would listen to them brag about their exceptional son. The house was decorated with his team colors, a huge congratulations banner stretched across the living room. Mom made his favorite foods. Dad gave a speech about perseverance and natural talent. I stood in the corner, holding a glass of punch I didn't drink, watching everyone toast to his hard work and dedication. Relatives who hadn't spoken to me in months suddenly remembered I existed, asking if I was proud of my little brother. I smiled and nodded, playing my part perfectly. Inside, though, I held the knowledge of what that essay really contained like a grenade with the pin already pulled. The guilt I expected to feel never came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: power. At once, I held cards in this game. Caleb stood in the center of the room, absorbing praise for work he hadn't done, for words he hadn't written, for integrity he didn't possess. The higher he climbed on his throne of lies, the farther he would have to fall, and I would be there to watch every second of it. The higher Caleb rose, the more reckless he became. The scholarship money went to his head faster than alcohol ever had. He skipped practices regularly, showing up only when there were scouts or important games. He started fights with teammates who questioned him, got into heated arguments with coaches who tried to discipline him. But whenever complaints reached my parents, they had a ready excuse. He was stressed from the pressure, he was young and still learning, others were jealous of his success. They smoothed over every incident, made apologies on his behalf, donated extra money to the team to keep everyone happy. I kept my distance, but stayed observant. I documented everything. Screenshots of his social media posts bragging about partying instead of practicing, photos of him with people my parents had specifically told him to avoid, recordings of him trash-talking his coaches and teammates. My phone became a library of his failures, each one time-stamped and saved to multiple clouds. Talia asked me once what I planned to do with all of it. I said, nothing, yet. Because the beauty of watching someone self-destruct is that you don't have to push them off the cliff. You just have to make sure there's nothing to catch them when they jump. The party that changed everything happened on a Friday night in October. I wasn't there, but Talia was, and she had her phone ready. The video she sent me at midnight was crystal clear, no shaky camera work or muffled audio. There was Caleb, drunk beyond coherent thought, chest puffed out like a rooster, picking a fight with Marcus, a guy twice his size from the neighboring town's team. The words Caleb used were vile, personal attacks about Marcus's family, his economic background, things that had nothing to do with sports or competition. When Marcus tried to walk away, Caleb threw the first punch, a sloppy, telegraph swing that Marcus easily dodged before laying Caleb out with one clean hit. Caleb went down hard, his head bouncing off the floor. The crowd gasped, someone screamed, and then silence as Caleb lay there, groaning. But the video didn't end there. It showed him getting up, humiliated, and trying to attack Marcus again, only to be held back by his own friends who looked embarrassed to know him. The video ended with Caleb screaming threats, spit flying from his mouth, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. Talia's text came through. "This is it. This is what you've been waiting for." She was right. I didn't post the video publicly. That would have been too obvious, too traceable back to me. Instead, I created an anonymous email account and sent it directly to the scholarship committee with the simple message: "Is this the character of leadership you want to represent your organization?" I also sent it to the local sports association and the coach of the minor league team that had scouted him. Then I waited. It took exactly 4 days for the first domino to fall. Caleb got called in for what they termed a character review meeting. He came home that afternoon, his face red with fury, convinced someone headed out for him. "Someone's trying to sabotage me," he ranted to our parents, pacing back and forth in the living room. "Who would do such a thing?" Mom immediately jumped to his defense. "You need to find out who's spreading lies about you." Dad was already on the phone with his lawyer friend discussing possible defamation suits. They never once asked if the video was real, never questioned what Epsilon had actually done what it showed. Their blind faith would have been touching if it wasn't so pathetic. For the first time in my life, I saw doubt creep into my parents' eyes. It was subtle, a pause before defending him, a glance between them when Caleb launched into version number 4 of the story. The scholarship committee had requested additional documentation, character references, and a formal explanation for the incident. Caleb's story kept changing. First, he was defending himself. Then, he was defending a friend. Then, it was a misunderstanding taken out of context. Each version contradicted the last, and even my parents struggled to keep up with his evolving narrative. During dinner, when Caleb launched into version number 4 of the story, Dad actually said, "Wait, I thought you said Marcus threw the first punch." The table went silent. Caleb's fork stopped midway to his mouth. That's what I meant," he stammered. "He basically did, with his words." Mom jumped in to smooth things over. But the seed of doubt had been planted. That night, I heard them talking in hushed tones in their bedroom. I couldn't make out the words, but the worry in their voices was unmistakable. The pedestal they'd built for Caleb was starting to wobble, and they were beginning to notice the cracks in its foundation. While cleaning Caleb's room one afternoon, Mom had asked me to help with laundry. I found something that exceeded even my expectations. Under his bed, pushed behind old soccer magazines, was a notebook. At first glance, it seemed innocent enough. Practice schedules, workout plans, motivational quotes. But as I flipped through the pages, I discovered the real contents. There were lists of girls' names with ratings and crude comments, details about money he owed to various people with interest rates that looked suspiciously like loan shark territory. And most damning, a detailed plan for selling his old team equipment that actually belonged to the school. The last pages contained something worse. Screenshots printed out from a group chat where he and his friends shared inappropriate photos of girls from school without their consent. My hands shook as I photographed every single page. This wasn't just teenage misbehavior. This was evidence of serious problems. I carefully placed the notebook back exactly where I found it, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to immediately show my parents, to force them to see who their golden child really was. But I knew better. They'd make excuses, claim I was misinterpreting things, maybe even blame me for snooping. No, this information was worth more if held in reserve. One night, Caleb stumbled into the house at 3 a.m, drunk again, making no effort to be quiet. I was in the kitchen getting water when he crashed through the door. He saw me and laughed, that ugly, mean laugh that only came out when he was wasted. "Look who's up," he slurred, pointing at me with an unsteady finger. "Perfect Adrianne, always watching, always judging." He moved closer, alcohol breath making me step back. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you?" I stayed silent, which seemed to anger him more. "Don't look at me like that," he spat, "like I'm some kind of disappointment. Mom and Dad love me. They chose me. You're just there." The words stung, but I kept my face neutral. I wanted to throw everything in his face, the video, the notebook, the lies. Instead, I simply said, "One day, Caleb, one day, they'll see." He laughed harder, doubling over. "See what? That you're a bitter, jealous nobody who can't stand that I'm everything you're not?" I set my glass down carefully and looked him straight in the eye. "No. They'll see that you're nothing without their blind faith. And when that day comes, I'll still be standing." I walked past him, leaving him swaying in the kitchen, too drunk to process what I'd said. I didn't spread lies about Caleb. I didn't need to. The truth was damaging enough when whispered to the right person at the right time. When Mrs. Chen from down the street mentioned how proud my parents must be of both their children, I simply said, "They're certainly proud of Caleb, especially since he's been managing his drinking so well lately." The confusion on her face told me everything. "Drinking?" she asked. I covered my mouth in mock surprise. "Oh, I thought everyone knew. But he's getting help, so we don't really talk about it." By the end of the week, concerned neighbors were asking my parents if Caleb was okay, if he needed support for his problem. Similar, carefully placed comments at the grocery store, the post office, the coffee shop where parents gathered, spread like wildfire. My parents found themselves constantly defending Caleb, explaining away rumors that were actually truths. Their voices grew strained, their excuses weaker. Mom stopped posting about Caleb on social media. Dad stopped bragging about him at work. They were exhausted from damage control. And the worst part was, they couldn't figure out where the rumors were coming from. The whole town was talking, and for once, Caleb wasn't controlling the narrative. Remember that plagiarized essay I'd carefully crafted? The committee's investigation finally found what I'd hidden in plain sight. It took them 3 months, but thorough checking revealed passages lifted from various sources. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my room when I heard Mom's phone ring. Her cheerful, "Hello," quickly turned into a strangled, "What?" The scholarship was being revoked, effective immediately. Caleb would have to return any money already distributed. The screaming started immediately. Caleb raged through the house, smashing his trophies against the wall, glass and plastic fragments flying everywhere. "It's not fair," he kept shouting. "Someone set me up. The essay was perfect." Dad tried to calm him down while Mom called the committee, begging for reconsideration. But the evidence was undeniable. When they asked Caleb to explain certain passages in his own words, he couldn't even remember what the essay was about. That night, I heard him destroying his room, the sound of furniture hitting the walls echoing through the house. My parents sat in the living room, silent for once, staring at the debris of trophies on the floor. Mom finally whispered, "Maybe Adrianne was right." Dad didn't respond, but I saw him nod slightly from where I stood in the hallway shadows. Without his scholarship, without his minor league prospects, without even his reputation, Caleb spiraled faster than a stone dropped in water. He stopped pretending to train anymore. His days became nights and his nights became blackouts. He'd disappear for days, coming home bruised, bloody, stinking of failure and cheap liquor. My parents' attempts to intervene were met with violence, not physical, but verbal assaults that left Mom in tears and Dad defeated. The golden boy they'd polished for so long had turned to brass, then copper, then rust. The house became a battlefield of silence punctuated by Caleb's outbursts. He blamed everyone. The committee for being unfair, Marcus for the fight, his friends for not defending him, and eventually, me. "This is your fault," he'd hiss when we passed in the hallway. "Somehow, this is all your fault." I never responded, just kept walking. My parents aged years and weeks, their faces drawn with worry and regret. They stopped asking me to help with Caleb, stopped expecting me to clean up his messes. For the first time in my life, they had nothing left to give him, and in that absence, they finally started to see me. The extended family dinner at Aunt Sarah's house was supposed to be a chance to regroup, to pretend everything was normal. All the relatives were there, the same ones who'd celebrated Caleb's scholarship months ago, but the atmosphere was different now. When Uncle Tom asked about Caleb's sports career, the table went quiet. Caleb tried to spin some story about taking a break to reassess his options, but the slur in his words betrayed him. He'd been drinking before dinner. When he reached for the wine bottle, Dad actually pulled it away from him. The look of betrayal on Caleb's face was sharp enough to cut. Then Aunt Sarah turned to me. "Adrianne, someone told me you got promoted at your job? That's wonderful." All eyes turned to me. I had been working full-time at a marketing firm while taking night classes, slowly building my own future without fanfare. I said, "It's just junior management," but pride flickered in my parents' eyes, an expression I'd never seen directed at me. More questions followed about my work, my studies, my plans. For once, I was the center of positive attention. Caleb sat there, jaw clenched, fists tight, watching his spotlight swing to me. When he tried to interject with an old story about a game he'd won, Cousin Mike actually said, "Dude, we've heard that one before. Let Adrianne talk." Caleb came to my room one night, more sober than I'd seen him in weeks, but still swaying slightly. His eyes were bloodshot, not from alcohol, but from crying. "You did this," he said, his voice raw. "I don't know how, but you destroyed everything." I looked up from my laptop, where I was working on my online coursework. "Did what, Caleb?" I asked calmly. "You know what," he exploded. "The video, the essay, the rumors, it all leads back to you. You've always hated me." I closed my laptop slowly, giving him my full attention. "No, Caleb, I never hated you. I hated what you represented. The unfairness, the favoritism, the way you could do no wrong while I could do no right." He stared at me, confusion replacing anger. "But they love me," he said, like a child trying to understand why his toy was broken. "They loved the idea of you," I corrected. "The golden boy who would make them proud. But that was never really you, was it? You're just a scared kid who got too comfortable with everyone else carrying your weight." His face crumpled. "I just stopped protecting you," I said quietly. "That's all. Everything else? That was all you." He left without another word, shoulders shaking with what might have been sobs. The final blow came when Caleb was officially kicked off what remained of his team. He'd missed too many practices, failed too many drug tests, burned too many bridges. The coach called my parents personally, not to deliver the news, but to apologize for not addressing the problem sooner. "We should have intervened months ago," he said. "The boy needs help, not sports." That word, boy, seemed to break something in my parents. Their golden child was just a boy, a broken, lost boy they'd created through their blind worship. Caleb didn't rage this time. He just sat on the couch, staring at nothing, finally out of people to blame. My parents flanked him, but their comfort felt hollow. Mom kept saying, "It'll be okay," but her voice suggested she didn't believe it. Dad said nothing at all. I watched from the stairway as they sat there, a tableau of shattered dreams. Then Mom looked up and saw me. Our eyes met, and in hers, I saw something I'd waited 23 years to see: recognition. Not just that I existed, but that I had been right all along. She opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to ask for help, but I turned away. Some words come too late to matter. For years, they chose him. Every single time, without hesitation or thought, they chose Caleb over me. Every achievement of mine was overshadowed, every struggle dismissed, every success diminished to lift him higher. But now, in the wreckage of his fallen empire, they looked to me with desperate eyes. I had a steady job, was pursuing my education, had built a life without their help or attention. I stood solid while everything around Caleb crumbled. The irony wasn't lost on them. The responsible one, the serious one, the overlooked one, I was the only one still standing. They started asking my advice about what to do with Caleb, how to help him, how to fix what was broken. "You've always been so level-headed," Mom said one evening, as if this was a new discovery. "We should have listened to you more." The apology hidden in those words might have meant something once. Now, it just felt like another burden they wanted me to carry. I gave them practical advice: rehab facilities, counseling services, tough love approaches. But I made it clear, Caleb was their responsibility, not mine. I'd spent 23 years in his shadow. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life cleaning up his mess. People sometimes ask if I regret what I did, if I feel guilty for my role in Caleb's downfall. They want me to admit I was wrong, that I should have been the bigger person, should have helped my brother despite everything. But the truth they don't want to hear is I didn't push Caleb off his pedestal. I simply stopped being the safety net he didn't know existed. For years, I'd quietly fixed his mistakes, covered his tracks, made excuses for him without anyone knowing. I did his homework when he was too hungover. I paid off debts he didn't want our parents to know about. I steered him away from bigger troubles more times than I can count. But that night, on my 18th birthday, when my celebration became his announcement, I decided to stop. Every consequence he faced was one he earned. The plagiarized essay, he chose not to write his own. The video, he chose to get drunk and violent. The spiral, he chose that too. Bottle by bottle, lie by lie. My parents chose him over me, again and again, until they had no choice but to see who was still standing when the ground gave way. And it wasn't him, it was me. It was always going to be me. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also, check out other videos on the channel. We've got more interesting stories for you.